There are a few tools that are required to perform a proper rebuild. Most of them are tools you should be able to find in just about any standard toolbox. Let's go over the list together before digging into the valve. A 7/16 open-end wrench, as well as a 1/2 inch and a 9/16 open-end wrench, a crescent wrench, a pair of vice grips, a hammer, and a flathead screwdriver. There's also a GT42 series guide shaft extraction tool. These vary with each size valve. We will go over the proper GT tool when we get to that part of the rebuild. Now it's time to rebuild the valve. For educational purposes, we are going to use a V424 valve. The only major differences between these valves, other than their size, is the specific GT extraction tool needed for each valve. Besides that, the order and execution of the actual rebuild are standard with all these valves, with the exception of the size wrench needed to take the covers off. We're going to begin by taking the cover off of the valve. This is assuming, of course, that the technician performing this job has already taken the precautions of isolating and draining the system and securing any control pressures. Let's move along. Using a 7/16 wrench, take the cover bolts out. Be careful to place the nuts and bolts in a place where you won't lose them or knock them down a drain. Next, if the cover hasn't come loose yet, take your hammer and give it a good whack on the edge. This should help the cover see things your way. Now you're looking at the diaphragm with a 1/2 inch nut securing it to the top of the valve shaft. If you look closely, you can see there's a slot across the top of the shaft. The slot is there for you to keep the shaft from spinning with a flathead screwdriver while you loosen the 1/2 inch nut. After taking the nut off the shaft, remove the diaphragm assembly. This consists of the diaphragm sandwiched between two diaphragm plates. Now we've made it to the shaft guide. If you notice, there is a machined slot across the guide. This is where the GT tool comes into play. This particular valve, being of the 424 series, needs a specific 424 GT extraction tool in order to take the shaft guide out. Like I said earlier, the tools vary depending upon the size valve you are rebuilding. A 421 series valve needs a 421 GT tool. A 425 needs a 15/16 deep socket. 426 and 427 series valves need a 32mm socket. Let's get back to work. First, we place the 424 GT tool into the machined groove on the shaft guide. Then take your crescent wrench, or a 15/16 open-end wrench, and carefully turn the guide out, keeping pressure down on the GT tool so it doesn't slip out and strip the groove. Eventually, you'll be able to turn the GT tool by hand and take the shaft guide out. Now we've finished removing the old diaphragm kit. Make sure you inspect the threads inside the valve and make sure the shaft guide O-ring was not left inside. Now that we've got the old diaphragm kit out, it's time to prepare the new kit that we're going to install. We're going to start by putting the outer O-ring on the shaft guide. Then we'll take the small blue O-ring and put it in the inside of the guide. You can use the shaft or a screwdriver to pop it in if needed. Now we're going to put the seat disc assembly on the shaft. First, put the rubber disc into the brass disc holder. Then put the larger side of the brass disc plate on the rubber disc and put it to the side.
Put the smaller copper gasket on the non-slotted side of the shaft. Then place the disc assembly rubber side facing out on the shaft. Put a little of the Loctite that was included in the kit on the threads and take the 7/16 nut and secure the disc assembly. Next, we're going to spread some of the silicone that was also included in the kit on the shaft. Once you've done that, you can take the shaft guide and slide it down till it touches the disc holder. And one more time, put some more silicone on the shaft. There you have it. The kit is ready for installation. Now it's time to install the new kit. First, we're going to take the shaft guide with the shaft and seat disc assembly and put it into the valve. Once you have it in there, carefully turn the shaft guide by hand until it doesn't turn anymore. This will prevent cross-threading. Then take the 424 GT tool and tighten the shaft guide. Now we're going to put the copper gasket on the shaft, followed by one of the diaphragm plates, facing the smoother side up. Diaphragms next. And now the other diaphragm plate, facing the smoother side down this time. Put a little of the Loctite on the threads and tighten the 1/2-inch nut, just like we did earlier using a screwdriver to loosen, but we're going to tighten it. Looking good. Now we're going to take the cover, making sure that the shape is lined up with the shape of the valve body and diaphragm, and we're going to place it on the valve. Hand tighten the 7/16 bolts. Then in a crisscross pattern, we're going to tighten them with the wrench. Well, there you have it. We just rebuilt a 42 series valve. If this video has helped you, or has you interested in doing your own service, remember you can get all your preventive maintenance service parts as well as technical support through us. Have a good one.